this week's David Icke videocast for subscribers to davidicke.com, looking through the week's news from shall we say, another angle, putting things into context that are not done so by the mainstream media. And down the line in Manchester is Richie Allen, of course, with me every week. How you doing, Rich?
I'm really well, mate. How are you doing? It's good. Looking forward to Christmas. Looking forward to the few days off.
Yeah, I want to get into Christmas and the war on Christmas a little bit later. But, you know, there's been a story running this week about sightings of UFOs by the American military and pilots. And I've actually just watched a recording of the Tucker Carlson show on Fox News, in which he interviewed one of these guys, a guy called David Fravor, who was a commander who told the story of how he saw, shall we say, objects that he couldn't possibly explain from a human point of view. And what I found interesting is how Carlson took it seriously and did a proper, sensible interview, allowing the guy to describe what he saw.
Yeah.
And then said at the end, basically that was very interesting. And while people are going on and on about Putin and Russia all the time, this story is surely far more important. And he's right, because this whole situation has been staring us in the face. It's been the elephant herd in the living room, and yet it's kind of dismissed, and people find it funny, and oh yeah, he believes in little green men and all this nonsense.
Yeah.
When the actual nonsense and the lunacy is in the other direction. The idea that when we live, on a planet, actually, it's not quite like that in truth, but let's say we live on a planet that is, according to mainstream science, about a billionth the size of a pinhead compared with the size of the projected size of the universe. You then look into the night sky, and see that explosion of lights, and remember that we're seeing just the tiniest fraction of what's out there. You then look at the fact that we can see only a narrow band of frequency called visible light. Technology can see a little bit further into the electromagnetic field, but humans are basically blind in terms of what exists out there, because the billionth the size of a pinhead is itself only within this ludicrously narrow band of frequency called visible light. I mean, the electromagnetic spectrum is only 0.005% of what is said to exist. And visible light is a fraction of the 0.005%. Now, when you put all that together, the idea that life as we know it has only evolved in a human form on this 1 billionth the size of a pinhead takes on a ludicrousness that crosses the line to full-blown insanity, in my view.
Absolutely.
And so the fact that so many people from the military, particularly in America, over the years, have come out and said, actually, I have seen this, I have seen that. Then there was the guy, William Tompkins, who died, unfortunately, recently in his 90s, who talked about the fact in a book that came out in 2015 that he was seconded into a top secret group in 1942, operating out of the big U.S. naval base in San Diego. And the specific role of this group was interacting with non-human life and investigating what the heck was going on. And he talks in that book, ironically, all those years later, after I started talking about it, about the fact that a reptilian race is controlling world governments, and one of their command centers is the moon, all of which I've been writing about, of course, long before that book came out. But he was coming from a completely different angle from inside the U.S. military Navy. And he produced documents and pictures of himself with various people to confirm that what he was saying about his background was true. And so you then ask why the whole subject is so ridiculed, so waved away with a waft of the hand, when the whole basis of it is there to see in terms of evidence and background. Then you look at the constant descriptions from ancient societies, whether it's in the Vedas from the Indus Valley and what is now India, whether it's the Zulu lore, whether it's Native American legends, whatever. They talk about interaction in the ancient world with the same forces that are being described now. I mean, when you have documents or writings that were found in a sealed jar in Nagamadi, about 80 miles north of Luxor on the Nile in Egypt, that were found in 1945, but they're estimated to have been buried or put in that jar, hidden, about maybe 400 AD. By a people, a belief system, really, known as Gnostics or knowledge. And that doesn't mean dates, places, times knowledge, but knowledge of reality. And they describe a force manipulating human society, which they call archons, a word meaning rulers. And they say that the two main forms that they take to take form in our reality are a reptilian form and a form that looks like a grey fetus with the big dark eyes. Black eyes,
yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
With what they're of course describing is the classic grey alien of UFO legend and lore. Then you look at the Islamic, actually the pre-Islamics, where it started, concept of the jinn, these hidden entities manipulating human society. And they are describing them in precisely the same terms as the Gnostic writings described the archons. You put all this together, as I have in the books, and so much more, and it's obvious that humans are not alone. I mean, the very thought of it is extraordinarily stupid.
Narrow-minded anyway, yeah.
But also the fact that there are forces, hidden forces that are not human, that are manipulating human society and have been way back. When humans were knocking rocks together and firing bows and arrows and walking around in breeches, these entities with high technology were around. And so, of course, when they interacted with ancient societies, they were perceived to be godlike because of what they could do. And so many legends about the gods, etc., come from this interaction. I mean, wake up. But of course, you've got people working in journalism, so many people, what that they call journalism, who are so childlike, so uninformed, that they will just, like I say, wave away in ridicule things that are blatantly happening.
So what about Tucker Carlson then? Because we've spoken about him on this program before, you and I. He's working for a network that we know what it is and what it represents, and yet the guy seems to have some semblance left of journalism in him and humanity in him, doesn't he? He seems to be pretty decent, even when he has a go at people. He seems to do it in a, in the right way.
Well, what I make sure that I look at the recording of the Tucker Carlson show most days. There are elements to it. He's obviously coming from the Republican point of view, although not without question he's not. And there'll be things that he stands for that I won't agree with. But what he's prepared to do is look at evidence, no matter what it is, and he's prepared. Not least, this is why I make sure I watch it most days. He is a vehement defender of freedom of speech, even among those people that he doesn't agree with, which is what freedom of speech is all about. And he is an intelligent man. He obviously is very well briefed on current events. Another thing that he's done is really question and expose the ludicrous official story changing all the time. The fact that he replaced Bill O'Reilly it was a massive step forward. I mean, you look at other Fox News programs and you just despair, as you do when you watch CNN and MSNBC from the other political standpoint. But Tucker Carlson is a proper journalist, and if we had more like him, it would be a much more informed world.
Definitely,
and he, like I say, gave this guy respect because he was just describing what he saw. And this is a story relating to this whole UFO revelation this week, which says Commanders David Fravor and Jim Slate were directed to investigate objects that appeared suddenly at an altitude of 80,000 feet, then plunged towards the sea. At 20,000 feet, they stopped and hovered before disappearing out of radar range or shooting up again. The pilots could see nothing at first, and then Commander Fravor looked down to the sea. The water in one place was being churned by something just below the surface. Hovering erratically 50 feet above that spot was some sort of flying craft, around 40 foot long, oval shaped and whitish. As the pilot descended towards it, it rose to meet him, but suddenly peeled away at an immense speed. The admits left him feeling pretty weirded out. The craft had no plumes, wings, or rotors, but seemingly traveled at a mile a second, easily outrunning America's fastest military jets. And here we go again. Fravor's comrades made fun of him when he described the encounter. I mean, the idiocy is extraordinary, and yet they would claim to be the we live in the real world, mate, mentality when they're just monumentally ridiculous. Anyway. Others in the US military, we now know, actually took him seriously, for the episode was one of scores of unexplained encounters between military personnel and UFOs that were investigated by a top-secret, multi-million-dollar program run by the Pentagon. Although it was set up in 2007, the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program has only now emerged thanks to its former boss. And of course, people investigating UFO activity have been pointing out for decades and decades the fact that this knowledge of unexplainable craft has been suppressed systematically by the authorities, and it goes deeper than that. It's clear they've actually found non-human entities a number of times. Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman, told me that years and years ago that they found what are called grey aliens in the bush, and he said it's amazing, basically, how quickly military vehicles turn up when they're found, take them away. And so there's a whole story, a whole world behind. Oh, I'm for Trump. I'm against Trump. Oh, what do you think of that? What do you think of this? Oh, seeing what's on the behind all that, diverting attention. This real stuff is going on, and it says here that the servicemen in each case were convinced that what they saw was vastly more technologically advanced than anything in the US or foreign arsenals.
Yeah.
I would put one rider on that, though, Rich. It's very clear from my own research and research of others over many years that the cutting edge of technological possibility, indeed the cutting edge of actual technology, is not what we see in the public arena. It's very clear that they have, for some considerable time, had what we call flying saucers or anti-gravity technology that basically interacts with the electromagnetic field, which is why they don't need propulsion of the kind that we've become used to.
That's a good point.
So there's that rider.
Yeah.
Don't let's always fall for the idea that highly advanced, unexplainable craft are always flown by non-humans. That it's clearly that's not the case. Another quote here in this article, Richie, newly released tapes make for disturbing listening. In another incident involving a US Navy Super Hornet jet chasing a UFO that emitted a glowing aura traveling at high speed and rotating as it moves, a pilot is heard exclaiming, "There's a whole fleet of them. My gosh, they're all going against the wind. The wind is 120 knots to the west." Suspiciously, sightings were often near nuclear facilities, be they ships or power plants. And the article here also quotes a project director who claimed that what was considered at the Pentagon, who claimed that what was considered science fiction is now science fact. And the Navy pilot, who was Icke Carlson, David Fravor, also told ABC News, "I can tell you, I think it's not from this world. I'm not crazy." Well, but people think you are because you're talking about something that you saw. It's that. I mean, that's what's crazy. I haven't been drinking. After 18 years of flying, I've pretty much seen about everything I can see in that realm, and this was nothing close. I've never seen anything in my life, in my history of flying, that has the performance, the acceleration. Keep in mind, this thing had no wings. So what we are looking at is a multifaceted situation where some of these things are flown by humans, where the suppression of knowledge of extraterrestrial interaction with human society has been suppressed. And and the fact that non-human entities, a non-human force, is actually from the shadows manipulating human society.
It's great that you're talking about this morning. I'm fascinated by those naval aviators, and not to waste any time on it, but back in Spain some years ago, I told you this. A retired Aer Lingus captain, an Englishman who'd worked for Aer Lingus for over 40 years and did the transatlantic flights for the best part of 20 years, said that he saw some extraordinary stuff, and pilots were encouraged, for fear of losing their jobs, not to ever speak about it. They were told it would scare people away from flying. But he said he saw something one morning that was incredible. It was a big ball bearing, David, a big steel ball. That's what it looked like anyway, off his starboard side, and it was moving around in the sky, and both him, his co-pilot, and the third officer on this 747, they couldn't believe it. And they said, he said, we never reported that to anybody. I've been retired, he said, 10 years now, Richie. I know the sorts of radio shows that you're interested in, and I can tell you that's true. So how many other pilots are out there, David, that have seen these extraordinary things, but for fear of ridicule, number one, but number two, maybe being sent off for a psychiatric evaluation or losing their job, they decide not to speak, eh?
Yeah, and I've come across endless people who've seen things, who will not go public on it because of the consequences. Why are there consequences in reporting what you actually saw? Because they don't want people to go there. They want people to believe that human society is controlled by the people they see, politicians and such like. It's not, ultimately. And there is an agenda unfolding of which transhumanism and artificial intelligence is a fundamental part, to actually take complete control of the human mind. And these are the forces that are ultimately behind it. I mean, I quote in Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, the new book, astronauts who have told of what they have experienced and seen. And it's the same recurring theme. And we need to realize that the world that we see is not the world ultimately. I keep saying ultimately because it goes deep in the shadows. That is the world we're actually living in. And interestingly, just why I was waiting to start this chat this morning, Rich, I came across this story posted on davidicke.com. Top 10 conspiracy theories that turned fact in 2017. And what we're seeing, and this whole UFO situation is just an example of what has been considered ridiculous, a joke, a conspiracy theory in so many areas. I mean, I'm watching my books, read on the television news now, basically, in terms of happenings in the world.